Okay, what's going on, YouTube? It's Yes, aka Big Dumper, on Global Poker. I'm back with another hand review session. I'm going to be going over 4 spots I played over the weekend. These 4 spots, I reviewed a bunch of spots earlier, but these 4 I felt would make for a good video. They're all pretty common configurations, and I can review them using MDA Demon as well as GTOW. So that's what we're going to be doing. And I don't want to waste any time. I'll make this a pretty short one. And I know that I could be a little bit long-winded about some of the hand histories and just like some of the analysis. So I'll try and be brief and go through them, and then you guys can let me know what you think in the comment section. Also, shout out to any, I've been playing on Global this week. A bunch of the, a couple people at least have hit me up in the chat or hit me up on Discord, just said what's good and that they like the videos. So shout out to you guys. Thank you for the support. And hopefully, more of you get to see my content or whatever, and it maybe will inspire you to make your own, or, at least play some cards on Global Poker. Anyway, here is the first hand. It is a BVB single raise pot. We see a reg from the small blind, open to 3 big blinds, and we defend the big blind with queen deuce of diamonds. This board is a mixed strategy for the out of position player, at least at equilibrium. So it's extremely dynamic, and there's going to be a lot of equity shifting turns and rivers that are very challenging. And typically in these types of boards, it's very challenging to play from out of position. So the small blind will develop a well protected checking range, and it seems like our opponent is aware of that, so he checks. And as the in-position player here, you're going to mainly be playing overbet or check, which is what my strategy is in this type of spot. So this hand doesn't really fit that well into the overbet strategy, so we decide to check back, and we get the 7 of hearts turn, and our opponent overbets, so roughly B133, and we're left with a decision here to bluff catch the queen deuce or fold it. So, like I said, this is a relatively unknown player. I assume that this is regular just based on RFI sizes and some 3-bet sizing. So, my only tell is bet sizing with this player. I have no other reads. And yeah, we're gonna figure out whether or not this hand is truly indifferent on the turn. So just to go through the GTO solution for this spot. Whoops, I had all the filters set up here. So this is the out of position strategy. We see it's the small blind really has to mix a lot of check. And just to restate the reason being, it's an extremely dynamic board, so you have to be careful. You definitely don't want to be going about range betting this board. I would say that would be a pretty big mistake. You get punished pretty easily. Your opponent can play pretty passively and punish you as well, just by calling too much. It's going to be very challenging for you to have a range betting strategy here and then play turns and rivers well. So our opponent checks, and this is the in-position stab strategy. So we see it splitting sizes here, but my strategy would basically be to play B125 or B100, something like that, and check. So we can go look at queen deuce. Doesn't really make a lot of sense to me to put this into the overbet, but that's whatever. I decide to check, and we get the 7 of hearts turn. So this is where our opponent overbets in this delayed c-bet line. And we can look at the range construction for this overbet strategy. It's going to be ace-queen plus pretty much, and maybe this is a little bit of a hand class that some of us might be missing, myself included, which is the gut shots and open it, top pair plus a gut shot, top pair plus an open ender, this type of hand class. Which is quite strong for a number of reasons, but it fits into the overbet strategy because it pushes so much equity. So the bluffs are definitely going to be some high equity draws, And this to me seems like a very human strategy. Like if a human being were to construct an overbet strategy on the turn, this is sort of how they'd split it into like the bluffs being flush draws, and straight draws, etc., gut shots, and then ace queen plus. With that being said, we'll get into that in a second. So the response versus overbet, as we can see, queen deuce, totally indifferent. But a few things that I was thinking about at the time were like, it would be very easy for the out of position player here to way over bluff some of these draws, particularly like flush draws, right? Like it would be like you're going to mix them. Like maybe it would be best if we solve this with the AI solution, and that way we could look at the turn from like a single size strategy standpoint. And while that's going, I've pulled up the data on the spot as well. So, is this it? So flop goes check, 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 and then turn. Okay, here's the turn. We see a bet from our opponent, and this board type. So this is queen high connected. We see that it's playing extremely close to theory, actually. Like, this is the range construction, and we see a lot of checking from our opponent and not so much betting. But if we go and look at the like overall, so this is not specific to any particular set of boards, but if we look at the overall like delay C bet, range construction when they overbet, it is slightly weaker. However, I would say that like you shouldn't really like predicate your entire strategy based on like small differences in terms of data, because your pool might play slightly differently. But one thing that is nice to look at in this type of with this type of software, or like this data, is like the range construction. So what we were talking about earlier, where so check, and then we check back, and we see the 7 hearts. What we were talking about earlier is like how our opponent is constructing this overbet strategy on the turn. And we'll just make an accurate size here. So it'll be B133. We see a lot of like they're going to be barreling these hands a lot, right? Like overpairs plus, even like the strongest top pair, right? But like these draws are not really mixing check, like if I had to guess, especially like these types of hands, right, where they have the gutter plus the flush draw, like big combo draws, flush draws, even like you could expect a lot of these to always bet. And if we look at some of the data for this line specifically, like this size, we see like, okay, this is just general draws. It's the frequency at which these end up in this line is much higher. Like it's like 4 or 5% higher. And then also like there's not as many merged hands. So like the ace queen region is sort of gone down, and it's mainly 2 pair plus. So those are some things that you should account for when you're bluff catching here. However, like in game, my thoughts exactly were like, it would be really easy for them to bluff almost every draw, and there are plenty of draws on this board. So it made it a little bit nicer to bluff catch with this, unblocking all of them, and then also having some removal to like value combos, specifically like 2 pair, right? A lot of the 2 pair combos, even though there's plenty of offsuit hands, but a hand like I guess maybe they're opening queen 8 offsuit BVB. I don't know if you're allowed to do that at 100 NL, but blocking like queen 8 of diamonds, queen 7 of diamonds, combos of queen 10 as well. Like it's nice. So I just had to go for the call here, and then we get the 8 of spades. And now this is a river that I expect will pacify my opponent quite a bit. It's just like a brick. It surely doesn't improve a lot of their hands, and I have way more like 9-8 and Jack-8 and stuff like that than they should. So, or at least than they should in their sort of construction, right? So they check, and I check back, and we beat the Jack-5 of clubs. And if we go look at like a hand like this on the turn, like this hand is checking, but from like a human standpoint, something like this would always bet. Something like most of this Jack X, right, would always bet. You have 9X as well that's doing the same thing. 9-6 would always bet. 9-7 I would expect always bets as well. So anyway, this is just the first spot. Like I said, I'm about as long-winded as it gets with these hands. So we're just going to move on to the next one here. And this is a button versus big blind spot. This one, the data is quite interesting for. So we open the button, the big blind defends. We get queen, queen, 9, two-tone. This is a board that I think you can range bet on it. I think it's very close. Like you don't have to do like a ton of checking. Yeah, I typically I'll bet these boards very high frequency. So this hand we go ahead and bet, and our opponent check raises to like this B75 size roughly, and we go ahead and call. We get the deuce of clubs, and we're facing a double barrel. So my hand is indifferent, at least in my head at this point in the hand. I feel like I have a bluff catcher, but there's a couple things here that I was aware of that maybe lean towards my decision. So these types of boards on the flop, we're going to go ahead and pull up the GTO solution. So this is the big blind. Here we are, c-betting. And I'm going to solve this for a one-size strategy, because why not? I'll make sure I have the data up here. Good. So these types of boards, basically, all right, so we see very extremely high frequency c-bet strategy for the in-position player. Let me get a drink of water here. These types of boards are high frequency check raise boards. I think if you're playing a regular, they're aware of this, and they're likely check raising quite a bit. Like I would say they're at least hitting these types of frequencies. Even if they're under check raising slightly, like maybe hitting like 14% or 13%, the double barrel frequency is extremely high. So it's much, much higher than it is in theory. And this is the case for like regulars and fish. With fish, it might be a little bit different actually, but with regulars, I know that this is the truth. So we're facing this check raise, and I'm going to use the size that they used in game. So I think it was around B75, which is true. There we go. And we can go ahead and look at like how often they're supposed to continue the turn. So we face this check raise. 9-8, we have like a slightly winning call here, and then we get the deuce of clubs. And we see like a surprisingly high barrel frequency on this type of turn. I think a lot of their bluffs have picked up equity, and that's sort of why this is happening. But if we're going to go even compared to like, if we're going to go compare frequencies across all these boards, like we should look at what the range construction actually looks like here. And yeah, so I've gone and pulled this up. So this is paired high flops, queen, queen, 9, right? And we're looking at the check raise line. So this is the check raise range construction. And let me explain how this works. So this is the This is the flop strategy. This is like the response facing a bet for the out of position player. So this is like from the point of view of the big blind, right? Like they're over folding versus a C bet. They're under calling here. And then they're over check raising. So they're check raising way too much. And then if we look at this section here, this is the next node. So like after they raise, after they've check raised, this is what their strategy looks like. It looks like the barrel frequency is hitting somewhere around 62%. So like if we're going to compare that to this is 43, right? And like even like this is actually, these are like spot on frequencies here, like for this board. Just comparing the barrel frequencies on the turn, for these boards specifically, we're seeing like a 57% check and 43% bet, which is almost identical to what we're getting in our GTOW AI solution. But go ahead and look at the reg tendencies here. And this barrel frequency is really, really high. And we see that the weaker portion of this range is also slightly increased as well. So a hand like 10-9 is actually probably a winning bluff catch in this type of configuration. And that's what we go ahead and do. We decide to bluff catch the turn, and our opponent shuts down the river. So what are we at? 16 minutes. Okay, this is the second to last hand. Which one is this? Okay, this is a cutoff versus big blind hand. We open the cutoff to 2.5. This is played versus quite a good regular in the pool. This player defends. And I'll just preface this by saying, like, this play is maybe not that good. But something I've been doing on these lower boards is using smaller c-bet sizes. So there's a couple reasons why I'm doing that, but I think the I'm going to see how it works. So before I talk too much about why I've decided to use this strategy, I want to see how well it works. Anyway, this is just like something you should bear in mind when you're watching this hand. We decided to c-bet for quarter pot. So the equilibrium strategy is definitely like split if you're mixing, like you're playing multiple sizes on the flop, but most players play B75 or check here. Anyway, we decide to go B25. Our opponent calls, and then on the turn, a lot of our range is like we can put a lot of ace king and ace queen into the small size. So like this ace of diamonds turn is pretty nice for that portion of our range, and like it really improves a lot of hands that we have, and puts a lot of hands that our opponent can have in sort of a grim spot. So like, I sort of my conclusion on this turn was just like, all right, like I'm having all these strong hands that I've bet small with. Like the sizes is typically like the threshold is strong ace high if you're using a smaller size. And I've gone and decided to, if that's the case, my opponent's, pretty fucked on this card then. So I decided to overbet, and my opponent calls. River, jack of hearts. My opponent checks, and this is sort of the point of deliberation that I was torn between checking and betting. And we're going to go ahead and look at what the theoretical strategy is, and then what the data says that we should do. So 8-4-3, we see checks. And I'll go ahead and solve this. And we can see how much EV like a small size uses if your opponent's playing appropriately. So let's go ahead and look at EV. So it's not losing much. You're losing like 2 BB per 100, roughly. So we go ahead and bet, and our opponent calls. And this is sort of like, an important talking point here is like, this is a hard check raise frequency to hit on these types of boards. However, like I think that regulars are able to hit these frequencies. I think that people tend to be pretty aggressive on these boards, but they also may be like, it's sort of like a psychological thing where you see like, okay, my opponent's like maybe trying to induce something here with like this small size. So I don't know. It's possible that people are leveling themselves into not raising this enough. Whatever. I don't want to get into that sort of part of the game, but we see a call, and then we get the ace of diamonds turn. And I've already decided that I think maybe I should go over the last hand. The last hand was fun too. No, we're not going to. This will be where I ended, is on this hand. Just because the video is getting a bit long. So our opponent checks the ace of diamonds, and then we're using like this B100 size. So this is close to like what we were doing in game, which is like a small overbet. It's pretty much the same idea. And it's built around like the strong ace high. Like that's sort of like the threshold. You can even get in there with some of the lower stuff that has additional equity, like a gutter. So we use this size, and our opponent calls again. And then we see the Jack of Hearts river. We see a check. And we see ace queen checking back. Now in game, I thought it was extremely close between check and bet, but I did lean towards checking back, and the reason being was that I didn't really think that turn frequency, like the shoot. I was gonna say, is this the right board? Yes, it is. Okay. So in game, I didn't think that players were going to be check raising as much versus this size. I guess we shouldn't even bother looking at data for this spot because I haven't really reviewed it yet, and I don't want to show you guys stuff that I haven't like already sort of looked at or am I familiar with. But like if we assume that even if they are check raising at this frequency, right? Like we see my hand checking back. If they're not, then I think it becomes much closer. So like, I honestly, just to like take out a hedge against myself here. Like I'm not even I don't even need to really mess with the raising frequencies. Like my opponent could be raising this much, and like we see that my hand is already still very close on this river. So imagine how much EV loss there is if they're not check raising the flop or turn as much as they should be, because we even see like some check raising on the turn that I don't anticipate is happening in game, at least not enough. So that's sort of like leading to my decision to go ahead and check back, and we beat 6-6, which is sort of a loose turn call, just because like I guess it's not so loose if you think that I'm over bluffing, but you are sort of blocking the bluffing region, like 7-6, 6-5, specifically with combos that are going to like follow through on the river as well. So like on brick rivers, I mean, i.e. this one. Anyway, this has been a long one, and it is late, and I'm ready for bed. So if you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and leave your comments in the comment section if you play with me on Global, or if you found any of these hands interesting or think I play like an asshole or whatever it is. regardless, thank you for watching. I hope to see you guys in the global streets, and if not, in the next video. So